Welcome, Sarah, to the podcast. It's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, so I found you on TikTok and
Woo!
I was just so impressed with your content and what you're doing, how you share, being really authentic and taking your audience on a journey. So, as we get started in this interview, I thought be great just to introduce yourself to our listeners, tell them a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do.
Oh boy, our favorite question as actors, right? Like,
Right.
what do you do for fun? And who are you? I'm Sarah Pribis. I live in New York. I'm originally from Philly. I've always acted in plays, sort of as I was growing up, and then ultimately decided to go to college and get a theater degree and stayed in New York ever since. I kind of stopped doing theater in my early 20s and focused more on television and film and paved my own way. I mean, I've always sort of been the type to go out there and get my own jobs, right? I self-submit. I have had representation throughout the years. So while that's all going on, I still continue to, again, self-submit for various projects. And then I've worked in all sorts of capacities. I do a lot of commercial work. I've done television, film. I do a lot of hosting as well. And social media is something that I love as a whole part of it, sort of documenting my process. It certainly has presented opportunities. And being someone whose passion really is storytelling, like whether that is myself on camera, bringing someone else's work to life as a character, or whether it's me interviewing people as a host and helping them tell their stories in that way, or whether it's, me delivering short form content that are my own stories or acting in sketches that I've written. I just see it as an additional outlet to be creative and something that's really honestly helped me to even get the courage to work on longer form content of my own. So yeah, I hope that answers the general gist of things.
Definitely. Amazing.
Great.
So then when did you start getting more active in social media and what was the purpose of it?
It's so funny. I don't know if you saw, but I literally put up a post, I think it was yesterday, about my journey because so in 1 year, I went from 1,000 to 100,000 followers on TikTok, which I'm so proud of.
Whoa.
I'm super proud of. And it was a lot of hard work. It was not easy. And I don't think everyone needs to be as insane as me because I'm quite, I'm quite crazy and intense. But I did give a little background and I think, yeah, for context, it's really important. So what sort of got me started on social media is I was hosting a show. This is probably about 6 years ago. And the show itself was a Facebook Live show for like a media company. And the show was getting millions of views, but they refused to tag me. And I was so annoyed by this. So I went to a friend of mine who was a sort of a like rising influencer of sorts. And I asked like, hey, what do I do? And he was like, have a conversation, which I did. They denied it. And he was like, well, I think it's just time for you to take this as an opportunity to build your own brand. And if people discover you, great. So he's like, when I look at your page right now, I'm just seeing photos of you with your boyfriend, you with your cat. Like, I'm not really seeing the side of you that you really want to be showing people. So you have to show them how you want them to perceive you, not in an authentic way, but right. How are you going to brand yourself or market yourself as a professional in this industry? And like, you can decide what that is for you. Maybe it's behind the scenes stuff. Maybe it's, you do want to write some original things. Maybe you want to give tips for what it's like being in the industry, like all types of ways that you can approach that. So I started creating original sketch comedy, videos, which were honestly so much work. It was a lot of work. But at the time that was sort of what I felt called to do. So I was writing all these original sketches. I was casting my friends to play the other roles. I paid a friend that was working actually at that hosting job who as a camera op to be my camera op. for these sketches. And like, we made these beautiful, super funny sketches, and slowly and surely my presence did grow. And then I pretty soon after that got a bigger hosting opportunity where there were more eyeballs. They were willing to tag me. And then when people came back to my page to look me up, they saw my body of work, and I gave them a reason to follow, essentially. Now, what sort of happened is I got burnt out. Like, I did that for a couple of years, and it really was a lot of, I mean, as actors, we know what it's like to have a lot of unpaid work already with auditions. So it's just more unpaid work, honestly. And it worked for a while, but then the pandemic happened. We were all quarantined, so I really couldn't work with people in the way that I was working with them. I also, there was so much going on in the world. I felt really unfunny, out of ideas. I felt very pressured to create. And so I kind of decided to take a step back and take a break from social media, which I'm really glad that I did, because when I finally came back on, I felt reinvigorated and inspired to do something. I didn't know what that was. By chance, I started hosting a new show. I met one of my guests on there who turns out was a social media coach. And there was something about when I was talking to her, like, I don't know, there was something about her that just sort of clicked with me. And I decided to hire her as my coach. And I have to let you know, like, I am not the type of person, I wouldn't say that I'm cheap, but like, this was the first time I had ever really spent money. Like, I'd taken acting classes, clearly, I invested in some of my equipment and stuff, but I never thought that like someone like a coach for social media was like an investment that I'm like, I can do my social media. Why would I hire someone to do my social media? It was the best thing I could have done for myself, because it wasn't necessarily that she was like giving me content ideas, but she helped me realize that I could rebrand, that it was okay to outgrow my old brand. If I didn't feel funny anymore and I couldn't show up that way all the time, like, great, pivot, like do something new, or keep that for the days that you do feel funny and inspired, and like add in more layers. And so she also helped me to see that we were in an era that I didn't have to show up perfectly, like with these perfect sketches all the time, right? Like, I could just make stuff that was a little bit more raw. And that was eye-opening for me. So I started sort of like playing around with new types of stuff. There was the lip syncing stuff was pretty popular at that time. So this was like, I don't know, maybe summer of,
Is it
I don't know, this was
2020?
like, 2020, I guess.
Yeah.
I take it. So I would say winter of 2020. That was when everyone was really like kind of hopping on TikTok. And I was like, I can't do this yet. This is too much for me. So I just really focused on Instagram. But I started to show up with the lip syncing, which I liked because it was really easy. It was fun, whatever. And once I realized I was kind of showing up pretty consistently every day, and it was so simple for me, I was like, I might as well put this stuff on TikTok. Like, why would I not? So I started putting it on TikTok. It did okay. But then there was something where I was like, I'm going to just continue to experiment. Like, I still don't know what my voice is. So like, why stop with just this? Like, let's keep going. And so, I started talking about mental health. I started giving story times as to like, I've worked in this industry for so many years and I have so many crazy stories. So I just started telling my stories. I was getting very frustrated with the audition process during the pandemic. So I would use it as an opportunity to educate people who might not know, like, what does it look like to be a working actor when you're not famous? Like, what does it look like to audition for a movie? And I just started, sort of experimenting with what I was making and saying, and using it almost as an outlet, like to vent some of my frustrations, but not in a negative way, and repurpose things that I was going through, like in my everyday life. And those videos went viral. Like, people really latched on to them. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I don't actually have to try to be anything on here but me. Like, people are actually just drawn to learn, like, either it's people are relating to what I'm going through because maybe they're an actor, or just the feelings are universal, or they're learning something because they don't know what this side of the industry looks like, or they're rooting for me because they're like, oh, it's so inspiring what she's doing. Like, that's really cool. And so I started to build a community and like, got really consistent. And again, because I was drawing from my regular life and the stuff that I was like truly just living every day. I had like endless ideas because every day there was something new happening. So that's a very long-winded answer, but I really do feel like my social media has been like on quite a journey.
Yeah, but that's such a great answer. And it is a journey, and it's really cool to hear what everyone's journey is, because it's going to be different for everyone, especially based on what industry you're in. I'm curious to know, what do you find is the difference between creating content for Instagram versus TikTok? And how do you notice, like, do you notice there's a slight difference in your audiences, or is there a crossover? Like, how does that work for you?
I don't like Instagram anymore.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, well, a part of it is that my audience on Instagram is 90% men, 90% men. And that is because when I grew my following on Instagram originally, the type of content that I was posting, it wasn't like sexy content, but like I did lean into being an attractive comedian because I was hosting the show where I was branded sort of a comedian. I was making sketch comedy and like, no, I'm just kidding.
No, but you're
like,
attractive and you've got a great personality.
I leaned into what at the time I felt my type was.
Exactly.
And I grew an audience that was 90% men. And somehow Instagram the algorithm has not adjusted to understand that I'm not posting that kind of content anymore.
Interesting.
And so as a result, my engagement there is just not as high because now anyone that stayed, I guess they've chosen to stay, but they don't engage as much because it wasn't, I think, what they originally came to follow me for. And I am getting a slight trickle down effect from TikTok. And of course, from posting this new content on Instagram, like it does find its way to the people, but it is very slow growth because I think I'm still sort of somehow Instagram has me tagged as a certain type of way, and therefore I can't like access the people that I really actually want to reach.
Gosh, that is so interesting, especially because for somebody who wants to rebrand, I almost wonder, is it better just to start with a fresh account on Instagram?
I thought about it. I thought about it so many times, but it's hard to throw. I have like 35,000 followers.
Yeah,
it's very hard to throw away. I thought about even simultaneously as a little experiment, and I still might do this, taking the exact same content that I'm posting on my current account, starting a new account fresh with it, and like seeing what happens, just and not even telling anybody, just doing it.
Yeah.
So I thought about it. I don't know. I'm not sure. The way that I personally differentiate the content though between Instagram and TikTok, because I do believe there does need to be a little bit of a difference to incentivize people to follow you on both platforms. Well, first of all, Instagram, obviously, as a lot of us know, right, is really pushing out the Reels content. That's sort of like what it incentivizes you to post. Now, Reels still have a time limit of 1 minute and 30 seconds, 90 seconds. I tend to, like, I do post some shorter content and some lip syncing or, trending audio type content still. And that works fine on Instagram. But if you found me on TikTok, this, a lot of my content's actually quite long. It'll be between the 2 and 3 minute mark. So I actually can't repurpose that content on Instagram because it doesn't fit in the 90-second window. So I would say that my TikTok is a deeper dive into a lot of the behind the scenes story time stuff, whereas my Instagram is reserved for more of the trending audio type stuff. Plus photos, like I do a lot of I'll post behind the scenes or red carpet photos. I use an opportunity to give more of a play-by-play, I would say, in my stories as well. So if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, they would get a more like in real time version of things that are happening for me. Whereas on TikTok, there can be a delay because if I'm filming a vlog, let's say, of being on set, I probably can't release that right away. Probably have to wait a little bit. I also have to edit. So that's usually coming out maybe even a couple months after it's actually happened. Whereas on Instagram, you would be able to see, oh, she's shooting a commercial right now. So that's, I guess those are my main ways that the two are different.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I like it. I've got all sorts of ideas popping up in my head and thoughts. So then do you also repurpose to YouTube as well? Are you on YouTube?
I'm slacking. It's been a lot. It's so interesting because I see all the videos from people saying how much money they're making on YouTube Shorts, and even Facebook is monetizing Reels for a lot of creators. So like it's been my intention to I'm making the content anyway, repurpose on all the platforms, but I'm very good with organization, structure, routine. Like it's funny, people often ask like, oh, what's the best time to post? I don't think there's a best time to post. I really don't. For me, I post the same time every day because it's part of my schedule now. So I know that I'm going to post at that time, and it's like woven into my routine. That's the only reason I post at that time that I do. I think I've been trying to integrate posting to YouTube Shorts and Facebook as a part of that routine. And it like literally would take 2 extra seconds, but I have not been able to manage to do it consistently yet.
It's so easy, Sarah. I'll show you after this podcast. I mean, you might as well, like, hey.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I doing? I have no idea.
Yeah. No, you do have an idea. It's just one.
I do. It's just like an extra step. It's 2 extra steps.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So when I was reading your bio, something interesting popped up, and I'm curious to know, have you been able to, or was this like a particular instance to leverage the success that you're having on TikTok and Instagram, but I'll talk more TikTok because that's really where it's heading for you, to leverage PR opportunities? Like, for example, I noticed you were on the Ellen show, I watched the clip, which was awesome. So cool. But have you noticed that? Like, are you getting more PR opportunities as well?
I would say yes and no. There's a couple of concrete examples, like I would say, so there's a casting director. I'll speak to like actually opportunities like in the acting world first. Mm-hmm. So there's a casting director who actually, I applaud her because I had submitted for an audition and she called me in and she sent me a text. And she said, hey, it's so-and-so from this casting. I just wanted to let you know that I called you in because I recognize you from TikTok and what you're doing actually matters. Keep doing it. And I don't think it's because of the followers. Like, my impression is that I'm seen as an industry professional, someone who's working, right? It's not, yeah. I don't think it's, yes, can followers like have an impact on someone's career? Absolutely. But like in this sense, I don't believe it was that. I mean, certainly the number of followers ties into your exposure. So it might be the reason she was able to see my content in the first place is because there's more eyeballs and traction on it. But I think it was more like, oh, this girl knows what she's talking about. She will make me look good if I call her in for an audition, right? So there's that example. I even have another example where I ended up booking a commercial, and I didn't know that they knew me from TikTok, but I had auditioned, I did the callback, and then I went to set and I asked if I had permission to shoot a vlog behind the scenes. And they started laughing and they were like, we have a confession to make. And I was like, oh, okay. And they're like, we know you from TikTok. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like, please film the behind the scenes. And they're like, we also want to be clear that you were not hired because of your TikTok. Like, when casting called you in for the audition, casting did not know who you were. And you got the callback from casting. But when we were brought into callbacks with the director knew who you were from TikTok. And you gave a good callback audition. And so he was like, why not? I love this girl from TikTok. She delivered a great callback. Like, why wouldn't I go with her? So those are sort of like two industry or like very tied to actually booking work that I can say. I have a third very, very good example. But this is actually from my Instagram days. So when I was hosting HQ Trivia, this producer, big big time Hollywood producer, played with his family. And he went to Instagram to scope me out because he liked me, and basically shot me a cold email, and said, hey, like, I think you're super charismatic. I love the comedy on your Instagram. And I'd love to know, like, if there's anything I can do to advance your career. I think you're super talented. And that turned, I mean, he's still sort of mentoring me. He's incredible. And I also got an opportunity to audition, and I booked one of the shows that his company was working on because of it. So that's another, example of how sort of it's impacted actual auditions. In terms of PR, I guess I could say that I've noticed an uptick, I think, in the past month or two of podcast article type stuff. Definitely a lot of what I'm getting a lot of is eager, young talent, or people who have actually have not set foot in this industry, but they see what I'm doing and they're like, I want to know how to do that. How can I do that? So I'm getting a lot of reach outs for people who want to learn more about how to get into the industry. So that's been interesting because I'm like, you can check out these actor tips playlists, or you can book me for a coaching call. Like, but I always feel weird. Like I have a hard time selling myself in that sense still, like, because it's not something I ever did prior to people asking. So that still feels a little foreign, but yeah, I would say like, that's probably been my experience with what's come out of social media so far.
Yeah. Yeah. It is different. Once you get to that stage and you've got that credibility, people do look at you as an expert and wanting to learn more, which is actually very exciting for you. And I think it opens up a lot of doors. So I'll be curious to see where you go with that. But it's I think one of the greatest things about having any sort of influence, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, a podcast, whatever it may be, I always see it as that ability to impact others, to inspire others, to serve others in some sort of way, is that ripple effect where that you're helping in your way make the world a better place. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I love it. I think the other thing that I would say, has come out of social media is I feel a part of a community now. Like there's other actors that I respect, like ones that are actually pretty well known, and then other ones that are sort of, pounding the pavement like me. And like I've had some people like follow me back or send me messages, and I'm like, this is really cool. And then I've also just being able to like relate to someone going through the same thing when you're sharing you shared a video on some topic about the process, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I just dealt with the same thing. Like that feels very gratifying. And then, yes, of course, being able to offer information to actors, but also to non-actors, like people, I think the thing that has surprised me the most is that people really want to learn. Like that's what I love about TikTok in particular. I think it's more of a learning platform than Instagram is. Instagram still has that aesthetic appeal, whereas TikTok, I've learned so much from TikTok, and I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Like I feel like I could learn about someone living in a crazy part of the world, or I can learn about something super specific that I had no idea about. And I think people look at me that way because, again, like I've learned that like 50% of my audience is non-actors. They're just there because they're like, I'm fascinated into this window that you're offering into this part of what you do. Like I had no idea. So I think that's very cool.
Yeah, definitely. It sparked a question in my head because when you get to that level, obviously you're going to get the negative comments, the trolls, all of that. How do you deal with that? What's your process of just like letting it roll off and not affect you?
Okay, so I'll be straight up because it has taken me years to be better at this. And so I am the type of person who is a people pleaser. I care what people think about me. And I'm the first to admit that because I've gotten a lot better. And I think a lot of humans are like, there are some people who really actually don't as much. Like my boyfriend's one of them. He's like, I don't know how he lets people, like, other people's opinions don't affect him too much, but me, I care deeply. And when I was hosting HQ Trivia, I got trolled very, very hard. And I leaned in a very painful way. Like I would go home and I would rewatch the shows on YouTube and I would read all the negative comments. And it was awful. It was really awful. And I did a couple things to cope with that. Like one thing I did was sort of like a mean tweets, Jimmy Kimmel type segment where I'd actually take the comments and then I would like respond to them in a comedic way. And that was fun. But they still bothered me. Like it still bothered me that people didn't like me or think I was a good host. But I will say that I'm grateful that I had that experience because I think if you are the type of person that's built like me, almost one of the only solutions I think at it getting easier is time and experience. Like the more that I get trolled and the more virality I have, the easier it is to not take it personally. So I would say like time is a tool. I do think like I've just done a lot of work personally to build up my self-worth, to know that I should not take my value from strangers on the internet. Like I can take my value from my acting coach. That makes sense. That's who I should get feedback from, or a casting director. But like the people on the internet, like whether they like me or not, I think something else that helps is like, because I do post videos where I am acting, not often, but sometimes. And that's where usually I get the worst feedback. I think I try to remember that like, I don't love everyone that I see on TV or film. I don't think everyone's great either. In fact, you don't have to be great to succeed in this business. Like, I really think a lot of it, like, yes, great people do succeed, but there's also hard work. And like, I don't need to believe, personally, I don't need to believe that I'm the best at what I do. I love it. I think I do a good enough job. I always think I compare myself to myself. Like I'll watch like one of the self tapes that I posted that did go viral recently and went viral a year ago. I don't think it's my best tape. Like I can watch it now with a pretty constructive eye and also look at my newer tapes and be like, oh, you've gotten so much better. That's awesome. Like I don't need to lean into people saying, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, you're right. I was doing some of that. And like, that's okay. Like I've gotten better. I also will say I delete comments. I don't leave all of it. Like, I don't need to see it. Like if something's bothering me, I delete it. I don't need to leave that up on my page. Like why would I do that to myself? I also think creating a forum and talking about it sometimes where people are like, oh, don't give attention to the trolls. No, I don't mind it at this point because I think it's really healthy because then you realize you're not alone. If you're getting trolled, sometimes you really feel like, oh my God, I must suck. But like if you see, oh, these other people are also getting trolled and I think they're great, then it makes you feel like, okay, like if this person who I think is great is getting trolled, like then maybe I'm doing okay too. So I don't mind talking about it because I'm like, I think it's healthy to have a dialogue around negativity on the internet. So yeah, I think there's a lot there, but I do think time is a tool. I think experience in receiving negative feedback, unfortunately, is sometimes the way that you just have to learn because it's like rejection in this industry, right? You audition enough, you get rejected enough, it stings less. It's the same with trolling.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Oh, it's just, it is one of those things that I think when you do that inner work and you're good with yourself, then it doesn't matter what other people say. And it is something that, for the actors listening, that dealing with so many years of rejection, it is very similar to the trolls. It's the nature of the beast. It's part of it. And it's how you decide to look at it.
Yeah.
What you decide to do. Well, I have two more questions for you. One is, how have you seen because you talked about rebranding yourself and how that shifted things. In doing that, as an actor or just, being in business for yourself, any freelancer, we've got to create opportunities for ourselves and stop waiting for the opportunities to come to us, creating opportunities for ourselves. So how's that shifted for you over the years? How have you, aside from utilizing the social media to create your own content outside of social media offline, have you thought about creating opportunities for yourself, that next step of where you see yourself going with your career?
Yeah, there's definitely multiple ways, because I am a believer in you never know where something might lead. So like I could try to predict like how I think my career is gonna, hit the next stepping stone, then level up, right? Like I could try, but the reality is I have no idea. So I'm a firm believer in like throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and like see what sticks. Now, I don't think you should do that to the point of burnout. Like don't overextend yourself, better quality than quantity. But like, it does mean that like I have many different avenues from which I believe like I could achieve that next level of success. So could that be from social media? Like, because I grow a big enough platform? Absolutely. Could that be because I go about it the traditional casting route and I'm in a casting room and I get cast in the next HBO show and like that's the break I need? Yes. Is it potentially because I met someone on a job that I did once and then they become the next, Hollywood director, and then they're like, oh, I loved working with Sarah? That could be the thing too. Or it could be I've written my own work and that's getting produced and I've now created, my own opportunity there. So I don't know what the thing is going to be. In speaking to the last piece, I am definitely a big believer in people writing their own stuff. So whether that is short form or long form, like I think it's so incredibly important, because like as actors, we are limited to the roles that other people write for us, unless you're writing the role for yourself. And I think that's so tricky when you're like building reels and you're looking at your footage and you're like, oh, I still don't have the thing. Well, like what do you think you should play? Like write it. And so I've definitely been working on a bunch of stuff. I finished writing. I've been working on a pilot for like probably 5 years with my writing partner. She and I have a very similar backstory. And it's not a story that we've seen told yet, like in the media. So we decided to write it. And finally, like, it's in a very good place right now. And we're, again, there's no one way to get something made either. Right. So it's like, okay, do we find the production company and do we attach a star and then shoot a sizzle? Like there's just so many different ways to do that. So we're sort of in the process of navigating all the options there. I've also like conceptualized an unscripted like show that I love, like that I would love to host. And I shot the sizzle for that. And pitched to a couple brands. That was in the middle of the pandemic. So it was just not a good time to be doing that. I'm trying to go back out with the concept now. I'm also trying to break it down into smaller, like bite-sized social media segments. Cause I'm like, what if this goes viral on social? Then maybe we have more leverage there. So that's another piece that I'm working on. And then I would also just say, like, in being a self-starter, social media like has also led to literally me not having to go back to any non-creative side hustle. So, and it's not necessarily like, oh, it's not, I'm making all this money through brand deals as an influencer. I'm not there yet. Like I make a little money that way, but it's more so, I don't know if you are familiar with like UGC, user generated content.
Mm-hmm.
So I've dabbled in that a little bit, but one of the brands that I worked for about a year ago, they just randomly reached out maybe like 2 months ago and they were like, hey, would you want to come on as our creative director and like direct all of our content concepts? And boom, here I am 2 months later, I'm on retainer every month, have a steady salary, like making content. I'm not even making the content, I'm writing the content and I'm giving it out to other creators. So like that's been able to like pay my bills. And I've had a couple other UGC gigs where I turn in the content and then I'm like, hey, I'd love to chat with you because I actually have so many more ideas than this like basic script that you gave me. I think I could, so I've had multiple meetings that I'm like sort of waiting on now because I'm like, I think I could creative direct more stuff for brands. So like I'm always like trying to look at different ways that I can sort of like see a bigger picture.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. That's great. How
Thank you.
exciting. Very cool. Well, my last question is this. For those that maybe are new to social media or have been at it for a while, but are struggling to get visible,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them? Like if you were just starting out again from scratch, would you just go straight to TikTok? Would you, do Instagram? What would you do?
Yeah, I would. Okay. So here's my formula. Okay, I'll back up. First thing that I would do is experiment. Like I truly think the only reason that I found what hit is because I kept trying different stuff. So find different things that you're passionate about. I have an actor friend who she's a very successful actor, but actually she's an influencer for DIY stuff. That's what she does. Like it's all DIY. So like try different stuff that you won't burn out on, right? So stuff that either you're very passionate about and you love to do, or you're doing regularly anyway. Like make a list of all those things, those activities, those topics. Like maybe you're an avid reader. There's like a whole book talk on TikTok, right? So like, I don't know, but like make a list and like also see what other types of people maybe are working in that space just to get inspiration, right? Like you don't need to like do what other people are doing, but it just shows you how many different types of takes on content there are out there. And then like experiment with different formats. So like do the trending audios and the lip syncing, make a vlog, talk straight to camera, like just try out different types of content, and just kind of keep experimenting. And when something hits, ask yourself, like, what do I think it was about this that made it go viral? What do I think? And then try to recreate it in a different way, and see. Now, my formula on TikTok that worked really well for me and that I still pretty much adhere to. This is an intense formula, but I do one trending audio per day to sort of get in the algorithm because that's what everyone's posting, and apply it to my niche, which is, like acting. And then I do one original piece, which is either, I'm telling a story or I'm vlogging or sharing an audition or something like that. Because if you get into, let's say your trending audio hits and it's viral, someone clicks on your profile and it goes back to your page. Well, if all you have is these like lip syncing things, like probably it's not enough to get a follow. But if you have all this interesting content that's kind of original there as well, that would be, someone would be like, oh, that's so interesting. I love this, like what this person has been building. And that would get a follow. So I think it's an important like 50-50 ratio of like trying to get in the algorithm with that trending stuff, but then also having your body of work that makes you're unique. Now, I don't think you need to do this every single day. I think consistency is key. So like finding something for you that works for you. So maybe that's just once a week and you show up once a week. But I will also say that I have a friend who's seen real growth on TikTok and he posts way more infrequently than I do. So I don't think it's like, oh, I say that because I don't think you need to show up every day. Find what works for you that like is not stressing you out, but like do it consistently. And then I would honestly, in the beginning, like put them on both platforms. That's what I would put the same thing on both platforms. Like no need to try to differentiate. And what might resonate with people on one platform might not on the other. And so be it. Like there are people I have a friend who has 1.5 million on TikTok. She posts the same exact content to Instagram and she cannot break 10K on Instagram. And it just is what it is. So I would say just like rather than burn yourself out, just post the same on both platforms.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. And that makes a lot of sense too. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's been such a joy to get to know you and hear about your story and what you're up to. Now, if any of our listeners want to follow you and see your journey and what you're doing on TikTok and Instagram, where can they find you?
I am at Sarah Pribis, SarahPribis on all the platforms. I'm even on YouTube Shorts, even though I'm not consistent.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we'll put in the show notes as well. Thank you so very much, Sarah. It's been really, educational and great to chat with you. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.